So there's a lot of advice out there about how to start a business, and a lot of it is good. And but what I find is that the advice is a lot of times geared towards people in their 20s and their 30s, where the assumption is you have a lot of time, you have a lot of energy, and you have really nothing to lose. So, go ahead and start this thing. And it's not bad. It's good advice a lot of times, like I said. But when you're starting a business in your midlife, when you're in your late 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, there's a whole different dynamics that is required. There's a whole way of thinking that is required because this is a very different life stage. And today I want to talk to you about the mindset shifts that are required if you're going to start something or a business mainly in your midlife. My name is Janet, and welcome to the Second Act Collective. So let's jump right in. What are the mindset shifts that are required for you to start a business first and foremost and to actually be successful in it? Right. So for myself, I started a business around, I think, in my early 30s before. And that was, I found, very different from the business that I'm starting now. So that was my first business that I started. And what I realized there is definitely a mindset shift that needs to happen when you're starting in your midlife. Because what's happening to us is that, you are in a place, and you might not be aware of this because a lot of this has to do with what's going on in your head, what you're thinking. You tend in your midlife to be very protective of your identity. You have built this thing. You've been known to have been somebody in a certain industry or sector or whatever that you did before, or the career that you were in. And so there's a protectiveness you tend to have towards your identity. And this is where, you get the friction when you're now starting in your midlife, because you have built an identity before, and now you're trying something else, trying something new. And, it can be a challenge, an internal challenge. And this is why we're talking about those mindset shift, because you have to really shift from, I've achieved this, I've done this, I've done all this, to you're starting again. Yeah, you're beginning again. So you have to have a mindset shift. The first one I would say is really the beginner mindset, where you're starting to look at this thing that you're going into, and stop being very protective of your past or identity, whatever you used to be, to becoming someone who can begin something again, something new. And that's a whole different mindset that is required in midlife than you would when you're younger, because you don't have the history. And as a person in midlife, you have history. You have things that you've done. You have a lot of things that you've built, and now you have to start again. And there is a whole friction there. It can be very difficult to get yourself into that. So we are afraid of looking, and why there's this fight is because we are afraid of looking like we don't know what we're doing. We're afraid of losing authority, right? Because if you're starting something new, you're not going to have authority in that area in the first place. And let me turn this off. Okay. You're afraid of not looking like you know what you're doing because you're starting something new. So there are all these fears that are happening to you, right? So you're like, people are going to think I'm a fool. People are going to look at me and say, what are you doing? So what are we to do then to combat this way of thinking? Is that we stop looking at, how is this going to make me look? What are people going to think of me? And we start to look at it as, I'm starting to learn something new, right? Like if you're learning a language, you're not going to be good in the first month, in the first 6 months. It's gradual. So the mindset shift that is required here, is that we are learning something new, and we stop worrying about what we look like, what we are learning, or what people think of us, what we are learning, and really just be in a place where we are saying, I am starting to learn this, and I'm going to allow myself to learn. Right? I had to get into that place of thinking that I had been in construction industry for so many years, and now I was going into AI, tech world, which I, had no clue whatsoever. And just starting to open myself to the fact that I'm going to allow myself to learn this thing. I'm going to allow myself to learn about AI. I'm going to allow myself to learn about tech. And I also understand that it's a long process. This is going to take a number of years before I can, you know whatever it is. But at least I'm taking the step and I'm doing it. So I think that is really the identity thing is I think one of the biggest mindset shift that has to happen, because this is an internal thing that's going on with us, and having to shed off that old identity, that old self, and all its achievements and all its failures and all its successes can be very hard, and can actually stop us into pursuing this new business we want to do, because we are entrenched in this identity and we are struggling to get out of it. And another shift that has to happen is that we have to move from fear of failure, which again links to the identity, to respect for trying and trying again. Because the thing that's happening here is that in your midlife, failure is more expensive than it is in your 20s. You starting something and it failing can have devastating consequences. And that can be, a hindrance to you to even want to start this thing, because you're like, what if I fail? The embarrassment that comes with it. The fact that you have to admit you're wrong, which none of us subconsciously want that, right? We always wanna be right. So this fear of failure is a way of thinking that we also have to let go of. We have to really have a shift with that. That instead of seeing this as this is going to be embarrassing, I'm going to risk it, or I'm going to lose it, whatever, all the stuff that comes when we're afraid of starting something, is that we start to look at this as, the failure, which will come and it will happen. You are not going to start something and not fail. Right. So there's a reality of, yes, failure will come and you might fail several times. When you just listen to the story of the guy who did invented that KFC recipe that he failed, and I think the business started doing well when he was 69 years old. That's a long time to be trying something and failing and failing and failing. Nobody never gave up. And so the shift we are required to, in this, the second shift that you need is in your midlife for starting this new business, starting whatever else you want to start, is that you see failure as a feedback, as information. You're getting information about what you're doing. That is not actually a personal attack on who you are or your identity, that you're not defined by the failure. You are simply getting information about what you're doing, and you're refining yourself. You're refining whatever it is you're doing. And so it's feedback. And we don't like feedback a lot of times, especially if it's negative, right? We like the fuzzy, warm, nice feedback. But when we have these failures in life, it is really feedback about, I might just have to iterate something here. I might have to make changes. I might have to do it a different way. And so when you go with that mindset shift of, failure is not an attack on me and my identity. I'm simply learning. I'm simply going to improve. And no matter how much I fail, I'm going to keep trying until I get this right. Right. So there's a part of commitment that is also required. Are we committed enough? And that's another mindset thing that has to happen. Are you committed to walk through this and fail several times and still get up and do it? And make it better, a little better the next day, make it a little better the next day and the next time until you get it. Are you committed to getting the feedback and accepting that the feedback is not an attack on you or who you are, but it's simply the marketplace giving you feedback? Are you willing to do that? Right. So these are all mindset shifts that have to happen if we're going to progress in this new venture we're going to in our midlife. And instead of us, another shift that also needs to happen is that we start to look at courage, right? Which is in a line, when you talk about courage, we're talking about risk. The willingness to take risk is a mindset shift that has to happen. We have to come to a place where in our midlife, we have the courage to take that risk. And it doesn't mean it's a big leap, right? It doesn't mean you're burning all bridges and starting over. It doesn't mean you are abandoning everything and starting. No, sometimes it's just a tweak, right? It's maybe a realignment, a recalibration that is needed. So courage in our midlife might not look very momentous and very out there, big leaps and whatever. It's just sometimes a very small shift that is happening, a small move. And so we don't need to have the courage to be brave to even take this first step. Because I do believe that courage actually builds the more you do something. So you're doing something despite being fearful. Yeah, you're doing something despite being uncomfortable. And for myself, in my own example, is me deciding that I'm going to post videos every day for the next 100 days, 300 days, I don't know. But at least for the next 100 days, I want to post. That's right, something that I committed to on YouTube and talk about things that I'm talking about right now. So, I realize if I wait, and which I have, because I've been thinking about doing this for a long time. So I realize if I wait there and just and wait for the courage to come, it's never going to come. What is the risk? The risk is that I make a fool out of myself on screen and people comment and say stuff. But people I don't know that are strangers, who cares, right? So we can, I don't know, in terms of just my own experience, avoiding being on camera was not going to help me. Sitting there and trying to wake up the courage was not going to help me. What I realized is that doing it every day is actually how I build the courage. Am I going to fumble and not say things properly and not pronounce things properly? Yes. But if I keep doing this, I'll get better. If I try to improve, I'll get better until I get it, however long it takes. So the shift that is required, the mindset shift that is required in this midlife is we're starting new businesses, starting new careers, whatever it is you're studying, is to move away from avoiding risk into, maybe experimenting, that you're just going to start by doing small experiments. And these are small experiments. For me, this is an experiment. I'm committed to doing this for a while because I made the commitment I want to be on YouTube, right? So I have to be willing to just say, I'm going to jump into this and do in smaller, I guess, low risk thing, whichever for you, whichever it applies, however it applies. So we'll start with the small experience, small actions, taking small steps instead of like, I'm just not going to do it and sit and wait until courage comes, because courage doesn't come that way. So this is one of the shifts that has to happen for us in midlife to start something new, to start the business, to start the new career. Right. So another thing is that many of us are trained in some way that, I think because of how we're trained in our work environment, especially if you've worked in corporate. This might not apply to you if you've always been an entrepreneur and never really worked for anyone. But there's a thing that looks like, you do something, you get paid, and so there's a feedback that comes. There's a clear linear way. If you go to work, you put in your time, you do your best, you get paid. or you get a bonus, right? It's a kind of a linear way of things, how things are working. And a lot of that is trained into us in some way. It is trained in us. I'm trying to describe this, but I think it's where I would say why people end up not wanting to go into business a lot of times if they're been employed, because there's a comfort level to it. And business doesn't work that way. Business is very up and down. And it requires a way of thinking that is very different than if you're employed. And I think this is a hurdle for a lot of people because business is not linear. You don't go in, put in a number of hours, work your best, and you get paid and you get this amount of money, right? Business is very different in that you could put a lot of hours and still fail. You could do a lot of things at your best and still fail and still not get the customers or whatever it is you're doing. So there's that. And so therefore there is a mindset that is required to be able to handle that. To, because if you're used to getting validation, if you're used to you measure progress, like we do when we work for someone, we measure our progress by whether the bonus we get, we measure progress by someone validating and saying you did a good job. There are all these visible wins that we get. And that's how we measure ourselves. We measure progress by that. We measure success by that. You're not going to get that in business. You're just not, right? Because income alone is not a measure of progress. And external validation is also not a measure of success. So the shift comes, the mindset shift comes in when we stop, again, measuring our progress and success by the external validations that are there, by the amount of money we are making, by the visible wins that we see. And we start to say, especially as we are starting, because you're not going to see a lot of this. And they say it takes about 2 to 3 years for a business to actually work. And in that time, it can fail and just drop, disappear. So we have to start measuring ourselves from the quality of decisions we're making, the improvements that we're making, that this is progress. The fact that I am on day whatever doing this thing that I started and I'm getting more and more confident, that is progress. The fact that you're getting more clear, in your marketing, in your messaging, in the business that you want to build, that itself is progress. So this is kind of how we are learning, because it compounds over time and you're not losing anything. Everything is kind of building on itself. So it might not look, loud and out there. The progress might not look loud and visible, but the small things that are happening is also progress. And, you are in this place as someone who's a midlife founder. Really, that's what that is. You're in a place where inside you want, what can I say? You want proof, right? You want the proof that what you're doing is working. You want the proof, and we all want that. And a lot of times we want it too early and not giving ourselves the time for these things to compound for us to then see the results. So it's a different, it's again, the mindset shift here is that you are not going to see maybe the wins, the validation, the income that you did when you worked for somebody. It's not going to probably come as early as it would if you worked for someone. So just getting in that space in your head where your expectations, I think it's a lot to do with adjusting your expectations too. Right? That way of thinking where you're now knowing, okay, this is the work I'm doing, even though it might not show great results out there, it's compounding bit by bit and it will show the results eventually. So another shift that has to happen is that um, there's intimidation, right? There's intimidation in starting something new. There's an intimidation that happens in starting a business. And it's not necessarily fear as such. I mean, there is fear, fear that's, I think we feel and we're like, there's a fear that comes, of course, with starting things. And I think I've talked about that before, but there is intimidation that comes, especially because we are afraid we're being evaluated. And this has to do with what others think of us, what they say, and we can freeze, right? You can start to procrastinate, you can start to not do anything. Um, and that pressure, it's if you've not been an entrepreneur, it's unfamiliar, it's not nice feeling, but it's there. There is some intimidation in this thing called entrepreneurship. Am I gonna fail? Am I gonna do well? Am I, how are people looking at me and judging me? And that can freeze you. So what we want is to move from, a mindset that says, I'm gonna move from this feeling intimidated to taking this as an adventure. In my own life, instead of me feeling intimidated by tech, I've kind of looked at it as this is an adventure in my midlife. And my kids make fun of me about this, about the fact that I like AI. But I've taken it to be an adventure, right? So one of the things that I'm doing besides the consultant stuff to help, individuals and businesses and stuff in AI, in trying to understand AI and actually how to implement it and how to use it, is that I'm venturing into trying to develop apps. And then that's something else. That's another discussion. But in where I want to explore, because there's so many things that I would like apps for my own life. I'm like, well, I'm gonna go into this adventure and start. And right now I'm working on one for my for college prep for my daughter, because I need something to help me with the college prepping. There's so much stuff. I think I shared this in another video. You can look it up and listen to it. But there's so much to be done. So I've taken this adventure, right? Like I'm looking at this industry of tech and all the AI stuff, the noise out there, whatever's going on. And I'm looking at it as, instead of being afraid and being intimidated that I was in construction industry for more than 20 years, I can look at this new industry through the lenses of, this is an adventure. I'm starting something new. I'm exploring something new, and I'm going to learn what I learn, and I'm going to share what I know, and I'm going to, use it as much as I can for my life and to help other people. And so I'm not looking to do this perfectly, which is why we get that intimidation, because we're not perfect. We are learning. We can have that intimidation. So the mindset shift is that I'm not looking to do this perfectly. I'm curious. And I'm very much in a stage in my life where I'm curious about a lot of things. Because my kids are at a stage where they are not as young as they used to be. My youngest is 8. And so there's some independence that he has, So that also gives me some time now to look and venture into things and to be curious about certain things and to try those things. So the curiosity that comes with it, actually, I think, it just, I don't know, it's exciting. At least that's how I feel. So I'm just here to tell you what I'm going through, what I'm seeing, what I'm experiencing. And I'm trying to encourage you to don't be intimidated by the new tech. Don't be intimidated by the new business or this, whatever. Just look from a lens of curiosity that you're learning and kind of enjoy yourself. And another mindset thing that has to happen is that we are moving from things being this thing, agents. Because when you're young, you're kind of operating in that. We are also, when I talk about agency, is the fact that when in your midlife, so when you're young, you have things full agency. I want to achieve this. So there's that part, right? Then there's a part of in your midlife, you feel the sense of agency is in time is not limited. So when you're young, you have a sense of agency and, oh, I have so much I want to achieve. And, you're like a squirrel and, running after everything. But in your midlife, there's an agency because you now feel like there's not enough time. Like you don't feel like you have time because you're, in your 50s or late 40s. And you're like, how much of my life is left for me to even venture into this? And so there's a certain agency in feeling like I don't have time. And you might then either say, well, I don't want to do it, or you might be in a panicky mood trying to do this thing, this business, trying to start it and pushing yourself because you feel like time is precious and you don't have enough of it, and this thing better work. Right. So the danger we get into with this is that, slowness itself is not a danger. In understanding that, you're in a season of awareness, that being this urgency you might be feeling, and it's real, right? I know that from experience, it's real. It's I'm going to be 50 in a year or 2 years, and I need this thing to work. I'm going to be 60 in 5 years. I need this, this happens to us. And so we are not aware, or we don't take the time to think, you know what, this season, is a season of awareness. I don't have to do anything urgently. It doesn't mean we procrastinate. It just means we are now in a place where we are required to think differently. So the mindset then becomes, this is not an urgent thing. I am recognizing that I'm in a season and it's not a sprint. Even though I might feel like I don't have enough time, lifetime time, it's not a sprint. I can actually take my time and build the business, the life that I want, which is, something that I talk about a lot, like designing the life and the business in your midlife that suits your values and this is to be done with intentionality, not just, agency, because you're afraid time is running out. So you stop asking things like, how fast can I make this work? How fast can I make this amount of money? How fast can I do all this and this? And you start to ask, how can I build this in a sustainable way? Again, because we're not trying to build lives that we want to run away from, which is a lot of times what we do in our 20s and 30s. We build a life and then all of a sudden we don't like that life. We don't want that life. We're now trying to have a vacation from it. So we are in a place where we are building, knowing the season we're in, and there's more awareness of the season and trying to build something that is really sustainable. Right? So building a business, or whether it's a career or business in your midlife, is really, it's not about the hustle anymore. It's not about, I don't know, the agency, the whatever. It's a lot to do with having the beginner mindset and being okay with it. And it's operating from a place of awareness. And I'm pausing because I'm trying to kind of, how do I explain this? It's operating from a place of awareness of the season you're in, and the even the constraints that are in your life. It's shifting your way of thinking and adjusting the identities that you have created along the way, and the security blankets you have created along the way, and just having curiosity to start this thing, to go into this thing. So these are the kind of mindset shifts I wanted to share with you guys. Ladies, if you're men watching, it's okay. But these are the things that I think a lot of times we are not talking about this because we're not thinking of where the person is in life as they're starting the new business. in a very different place than somebody who's young. And so if you enjoy this kind of content, please subscribe and share with these videos and other videos that I have with your friends, with people who are in their midlife, women especially who are in midlife, who are transitioning into a new career, a new business, or whatever transition you're in this stage of life. Share with your friends. And if you have not subscribed yourself, please go ahead and subscribe. I look forward to talking to you again next time.